to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 43. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
But this summer, we're taking a little bit of a break from having guests on a regular basis to do a travel tips series. So today, we're going to be talking about transportation.
Transportation? There's no
Planes.
transportation in travel. You just sit on your couch and you imagine you're there, Cheryl.
Ryan, I'm very concerned about these trips that you've been telling me about that you've taken now.
I don't understand what your problem is.
That whole green and blue cave you were telling me about.
Oh, I saw it all in my mind's eye. It was beautiful.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, there's quite a lot, which can be really fun and can be really frustrating and confusing, and
Yes.
hopefully more fun than frustrating and confusing.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
So,
could
Ryan,
be some fun forms of transportation.
this is true. Ryan, what is let me start by asking your favorite form of transportation to take.
I like to me, the pinnacle of the best form of transportation is the London Underground, the tube.
Okay.
So I guess technically that's like a subway, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So maybe that. What I love about it is it's predictable. Unlike a bus, it's always following the same path. It has the same stops. It often will even tell you how long it is between stops, and it's pretty reliable most of the time. I've encountered those. Let's see. I did the London Underground. There's the Paris Metro. Moscow, Russia has I think they call it the Metro also, which is a similar sort of a thing. I'm trying to think if I've done it anywhere else. I don't think so. I know there's some places in the U.S. that do, but I've not been to those places.
Yeah.
That's not true. Seattle has the light rail that does go underground ever so slightly, and I've been on part of that once. And I did love it for that very same reason. Like, ooh, this is like the tube.
Sweet. Very cool.
How about you?
Yeah, I love a train. So
Yeah,
long
you
distance or short distance. So short distance, that would be the underground or the metro or whatever you call it. But I love more of a long distance, like a couple hours on a train is my jam. I love it
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah.
I think most of the time when I think of train, I think of the first train trip that I did when I was probably still in elementary school. And we took a train down to my grandparents from Seattle down to the San Jose area of California. So it was multiple days, and it was overnight, and it was miserable.
Oh, because you were a kid on an overnight train trip?
Well, and like our seats were right by the door. And so anytime someone went in and out of the train car, there was like an air pressure door, so it made noise.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, it was just not ideal. I've not done an overnight train since then. I've done some of the shorter train trips when I was in Switzerland. I did most of that travel by train. I've done the TGV in France once or twice, which is nice. But those things are significantly shorter. You're on the train for like maybe an hour or two.
Yeah, that's fun. I like a couple hours on it. I've even done some like 5-hour train rides that I've been pretty happy on though too. So yeah. I mean, and compared to a flight, oh my goodness, like
Well, there's a lot more range of motion.
so
on a
nice. Yeah, and a car with food in it where you can go just like get food. That's exciting. Yeah, and the view is fun. Yeah, Feels very relaxing to me, very chill. Yeah. I'm trying to think of where I've gone on an underground. So London, Paris, Rome, Boston, New York, Seattle. Yeah, I like an underground. They're very easy. Other places in Spain, I've gone on a Madrid. Madrid has a good one. Yeah, and what's fun about Madrid's is that they have their like underground that's like right within the city, and then they have ones that go further to like the outskirts of town, suburbs, others, and it's all at the same. Oh, and they have ones that go to other parts of the country, all at the same station. It's
That
like
is
this
nice.
like central
They're all
spot,
interconnected.
which is very cool. Yeah, and so
Yeah,
I
London
like
has
that.
the same thing. So like there's the London Underground, but then they also have a rail system. I don't remember what it's called, but I can see the logo in my head. It's like two like red lines that are parallel to each other with like hash marks along them. So I think they have like 2 or 3 other systems that are technically not the underground, but yeah, they use the same. When they overlap, they use the same stations and everything, which is
I
really
love
nice.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good. What's your least favorite form of transportation?
Least favorite form of transportation. It might be a plane. Just because they're so uncomfortable for me under normal economy circumstances. So if it's it's not normal economy, then that can be much better. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm used to it, so I can do a 10-hour flight. I do 10-hour flights, a couple times a year at this point, usually. So it doesn't really faze me. I think the biggest thing though with plane travel, and not that you don't get this other places, and you and I have talked about this before, not on the podcast, but I don't like being in the airport because it feels like wasted time to me.
Oh, we had a long conversation about this that was not on the podcast. And
Yes,
then
we
we were
did.
like, why are we talking about travel when we're not recording? We're not allowed to do that. So, yeah. And that's why I love being on the airport and in an airplane, is because normally in life I try to be very productive. And then when I'm in anywhere of like air travel or any travel, train travel too, all of a sudden it feels like I just got secret bonus free time where I just can like do something I want, but like I've already blocked it on my calendar as being busy, and then I'm like, oh, but I'm just sitting here. And so then it feels like this magical time of like getting to do just one task at a time or just kind of hang out, which I don't normally do at home a lot. And so I think like, yeah, it's kind of like when I go house sit for someone, and when I'm in my own home, I'm always thinking about like, oh, I need to clean that. I need to get this thing done. There's all these tasks around me. And then I go to someone else's home and I'm like, there's nothing I have to do here, so I can just enjoy, and so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I can relax so much better when I'm in my own space. Even if there
Interesting.
are things that need to get done, because I live by myself, it only affects me. So
yeah.
if I'm okay with the dishes staying in the sink and not be going in the dishwasher, then I'm okay with it, and it doesn't bother anyone else, and then I just do the relaxing that I need to do. Whereas I
Interesting.
feel like when I'm not at home, I can't necessarily do those things. I can't get stuff done. Unlike you, I don't tune people out very well. So in an airport, I can't really, I can't get a lot of work done. I can't be super efficient. I
Yeah.
don't have all the things that I need. So it feels very wasted. The time on the plane doesn't feel wasted to me because I'm going somewhere. But the
yeah.
time in the airport, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not making any progress.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just waiting.
Yeah, that's fair. That's how I feel the second my flight is delayed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing I love about the airport is that people watching. I love people watching, and people in airports become animals, or like it's just like it's like the wild wild west in the airport, where it's just like anything goes, anything's a chair, anything is acceptable clothing. Like
See,
if you need to
that's
get
so
somewhere,
interesting.
then you can be so rude to the people around you. Like it's a place where someone, like a businessman, could be running and everyone would understand why they're running. I mean, it's hilarious to me because it's just like ridiculous behavior comes out and it's fine.
That's so funny that you see that as people watching. I find that aggravating. It's like, why are you all being idiots?
But do you like people watching in other circumstances?
Yeah.
Okay, here's my challenge for you next time you're in an airport. Just be like, I get to do people watching right now. And,
Well, I've
and
done
see
people
what happens.
watching in airports, and it just makes me frustrated because people are idiots. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I think it's
I've
funny.
done it, but I don't enjoy it because I don't like what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then there's some
Yeah.
people that are just, if everyone's just sitting, that's kind of boring.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But it is fun sometimes to make up stories about people when you're people watching.
Or overheard conversations where you just hear a snippet and you're like, what is happening right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Okay, Cheryl. So to keep this
Yes.
moving along,
Yes.
how many different forms of transportation do you think you've been on, and what would they be?
Okay, so plane, car, train,
Okay.
bus, boat. Is metro, like inner city metro, different than like train? Are we counting those as different things?
I would count them different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I said plane already. I'm lumping all of
Funicular.
boat. Funicular. Sky tram, gondola, that type of thing.
Yep.
Walking?
Well, see, that's what I was wondering when you asked me my favorite form of transportation to take. That's why I asked you to take.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it was
Because is
transportation at all, I
walking
might
your
say
favorite?
walking.
Okay.
It might be.
Well, then I'm going to say walking counts. And cool. I'm glad walking's your favorite. What else have I? Houseboat? No, I already said boat. Boat is a lot of things, but that's fine. We'll keep boat as one.
And I don't know if houseboat, that's not so much transportation as it is
That's
lodging.
true. ATV.
Oh, okay.
I'm on 10 so
We're
far.
getting real creative.
I know, yeah. I'm at 10. That's how many I thought of.
Okay.
And you?
Well, a lot of those are going to be the same. So let me see.
Yeah.
So if we've got plane,
Yeah.
train,
Automobile. Yep.
boat. So I got all those ones. Underground, I've done that one.
Yep.
Bus, definitely done that one. I've done a funicular, like you
Okay.
have.
Walking.
How about and I've done both kinds of gondola. Because there's a gondola and there's a gondola. And they're spelled exactly the same.
Oh, I've never gone on the boat one.
I have, and it's awesome. I've done
Okay.
it twice.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I've done it twice, actually.
That's very cool.
It's very fun.
I know when you've gone on
What have I gone on?
the Segways.
Oh, yes. Segway. That one's super fun.
And you've done bike too.
Oh, I've done bike.
I think.
Yep.
Okay. And
So
you
that puts me
didn't
at
count
11.
walking. Yeah, I counted walking
Oh,
for mine.
walking.
Yeah.
So that's 12. Mm-hmm.
Have you gone in a hot air balloon?
No.
Neither have I.
I don't know if I would.
I've gone in a seaplane. Is that a different kind of a plane or no?
I would count that as a different kind of
Okay,
plane.
then
Yep.
I'm at 11.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm yeah, somewhere around there.
I've never been
I'm
in a
sure-
helicopter.
Nope, I haven't either.
What are the other things?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are our big categories. I'm sure that
Love
some
it.
of our listeners are like yelling at their audio playing device right now with something that's incredibly obvious that we missed.
Listeners, tell us what transportation you've gone on at Timway Podcast.
Right.
Ryan, is there a form of transportation you've been wanting to try that you have not done yet?
Something I want to do but I haven't done. Does it have to be a real one?
I mean, is it a Star Wars one?
Yeah.
What's the Star Wars transportation you want to try?
I mean, it's just science fiction in general. I would love to do like warp travel, like faster than light travel.
Okay. Like teleporting?
No, that was what first came to my brain. And then I was like, I'm like Leonard McCoy. I don't like the idea of my atoms being destroyed and then new atoms being formed in a new location.
Okay. So you
Even
just
if they're
want to
in-
be very, very fast.
Yeah,
So
I
it would
just
be
think it
like
would be
seconds.
yeah, I just think it would be fun to go faster than light. That'd be amazing.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah.
You might get like a headache or something, but it could
I mean,
be cool.
who knows
Yeah.
how that all works. But as far as like a real form of transportation,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Oh, you know what I would love to do?
Yes.
It's not really an option currently. I would have loved to have gone on the Concorde.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. To travel faster than the speed of sound. That would be pretty cool. Cuz you could do the trip from I think it's from, like from here from Seattle to Europe, which is typically depending where you're going 9 to 10 hours, you can do it in 3.
That's so fast.
Yeah.
That's faster than the speed of sound.
It is. Imagine that. What about you? Is there a form of transportation you are just dying to do?
Well, I do want to do an overnight train. I've never done one. And I
Oh.
think that I want to try it and see what happens, And I think like no, I've gone on a river boat. I've never gone on a river cruise. A river cruise could be fun.
Yeah.
Gone on
depending
one
the river.
cruise ship, yeah. And I want to try a Segway at some point. I've never
Oh,
gone
you
on a
totally
Segway
should.
before.
You know what you should? Oh, I mean, the weather might make that prohibitive, but
In Germany?
yeah, either in Germany or in Prague. I guarantee you, Prague has at least one Segway tour.
Probably, yeah. Or in Amsterdam, because we're going to be there for
Oh,
a
that's
day.
right. Or in Amsterdam.
Yeah. Huh.
So they're not
that
cheap,
could be fun.
but they're super fun.
Really?
They're just super fun.
Cool. It sounds like fun. I think I would enjoy it. Yeah. So we've talked about kind of our experiences with transportation. I think we need to talk about advice or strategy or whatever we want to call it, both for intercity or intercountry transportation and then like within a city, the public transportation that you're choosing to do. So when you are planning a trip, Ryan, how do you go about choosing what form of transportation is going to be your primary form?
Well, I assume that we're talking about not so much getting to the place,
Correct.
as much as once you're there, how do you get around?
Once you're there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it really depends on the location. Each region, each city, each country has its own unique terrain and layout of the cities and surrounding areas and things. And then they also have different types of public transportation. So depending on what it is I'm wanting to do and where I'm going is going to depend on what I'm going to do. So, for example, when we went to Ireland, we rented a car. I don't typically rent a car, but because of what we were doing in Ireland, it made sense. And they don't have a particularly strong public transportation system across the entire country. As far as like how to get places, there are buses that you can do, but they're fairly infrequent and they don't give you a lot of flexibility and freedom. So we decided to rent a car. Whereas when I was in Switzerland, they have a really good train system. So I didn't even look at the cost of renting a car. I just used the train to get between the cities that I was going to get to. And then I walked everywhere else. So I think it just depends on the city. And that's some of what I research before I go. I really like using public transportation, partly because it does get you a little more flavor of the country and of the city and of the culture. because while yes, there are other tourists, especially like with the London Tube and things like that, that will use the public transportation, there's also a lot more locals and people who are there that use public transportation. And so being able to kind of do some of that people watching that you were talking about and some of
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, I think you can do. It's more in your face, I guess, more easily accessible when you're using public transportation.
That's a good point. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think that it's just definitely researching. If I can at all avoid renting a car, I want to avoid renting a car. But I think it is trying to figure out what locals do and what the place has to provide. And then as well, like if I'm going to multiple locations on my trip, if I had to rent a car for part of it, then it is kind of like, well, then should I just rent a car for the whole thing? You know, but you know, so I think it's trying to figure out what's going to make sense overall. But I also love public transit, and I think that's one thing is I just try to do some research on like how do people who live in the place get around, you know, and so or yeah, just trying to figure out what makes the most sense in that location. And then I really do like walking, and so I will look up like how walkable a city is, but even if it's not super walkable, like I might still try to do some walking and
Sure.
everything. And so that's where Google Maps walking directions comes hugely
Yeah.
in hand. So
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I haven't taken advantage of, but have thought about several times and still think is a good idea. A lot of cities, and I saw this first in Europe, but you can see it now here in the United States, the sort of, I don't know if crowdsourced is the right word, but bikes where you can rent a bike, but you just kind of pick one
Oh,
up and then
yeah.
you drop it off. Here, at least in the Seattle area, it's, what is it? Lime bikes or something like that. They're green. And that one's even randomer because you literally can leave the bike wherever. Most of the places that I've seen it in France, in Europe, which I think the first place I saw it in was France. But I've also seen them in Slovenia and I think in Croatia. I'm trying to remember if I've seen them other places, but I know other countries have them as well. I also saw them in Ireland when I was
okay.
there. But they're these kind of big, long rows where you kind of almost like check in the bike where it kind of locks itself in.
Oh,
And then
cool.
you can unlock it or whatever with your little card that you have, and then you can drop it off at any of the locations. So it
Nice.
doesn't have to come back to that place. You never have to talk to a person, but you do sort of pay for it. And that way you can get a little bit farther than you can walking, but it still has a lot of the advantages of walking, where
Nice.
you're not going super fast. You're not looking through a window. You've got the flexibility to stop if you want to. You know, there's a lot of those things that I really, really like. So that's something I
That's
haven't
cool.
done, but
But you wanna
would
try
be
that.
interested in trying.
That's awesome. That's a cool idea. Yeah. So when thinking about maybe you're going on a trip where there's multiple cities or multiple countries, and we've chosen what type of transportation we want to do. Your style, I'm guessing, I'm not sure actually. My style is to book all that in advance. You said sometimes you don't. So can you explain why or why not you would book that in
so
advance?
it depends. Again, it depends on what I've learned from the research that I've done. So I'm going to reference my trip to Switzerland again because it was actually sandwiched. So I went to Croatia first with a team like I've done before. And then I was going up to Slovenia to visit people that I had met and knew there. But I had a week in between when I finished in Croatia and when people were available in Slovenia. So I went to Switzerland for the week. And I flew from Split, Croatia, up to Geneva, Switzerland. And I used one of the budget airlines for that. So it was like, I don't know, $50 or something. And it was just a one-way ticket. And that was it. And so I did that. And that one I booked ahead of time. because that was a flight. So flights I'll typically book ahead of time. I was going to book my train tickets ahead of time in Switzerland, except the recommendation was it's actually cheaper if you buy your tickets while you're in the country, as
That's so
opposed to buying them
interesting.
online ahead of time. And sometimes that's the case. So in that case, I didn't actually buy them until I got there. And the way those trains worked, it wasn't so much that, I mean, you could get a specific seat, but those were the more expensive ones, or you could just be sort of in whatever the coach kind of cars were. And in those one, it was just kind of open seating. So you just buy a ticket to get on the train, and then you just get on the train. And so those I did not book ahead of time because those were trains that came, fairly regularly. I just used their app that they had to kind of keep track of what time different things were leaving. And that worked just fine.
So you still booked it before you actually had the train ride.
Well, in Switzerland, I got a pass. I don't remember, it was like a 5-day pass or something like that.
Okay.
And then that allowed you to use the trains as much as you wanted to during that time.
And then
And
you
so I
just
didn't
looked at the times on your app.
Yep. So I didn't
Okay.
need a specific ticket booked for a specific time.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I've done. I mean, I think with that, it probably depends on how many options there are for if I'm not going to book something in advance. So there are times when it's like, there is one train a day to this place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to buy myself a ticket then because I don't want to
Yep.
miss that. But then there's
Yep.
other times when there's like 20, or 10, or there's multiples, and so that's something where, I found that, like, yeah, it's actually not a big deal to just book it, like, even the day of or the day before or just whatever, it's not, doesn't need a ton of time. There are a lot of options. They don't fill up, unlike airlines, and so,
Well, they
That's
don't overbook them typically.
yes, yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, for sure. And so that is kind of nice. And then obviously, if someone was driving, you can just do the driving and everything. Yeah, I when my sister and I were planning our trip to Italy and Spain, we talked to someone who lived in Spain, and we were saying that we were gonna take the train just all between all the different cities we were going to, and we said, "Oh yeah, we'll do a train from Venice to Barcelona," and he was like, "Are you kidding me? You should." He was like, "That is way too long. That's going to waste up so much of your time, and plane tickets are not that much over there." And he was like, "You're flying." And so we looked it up, and sure enough, price-wise, I think flying might have even been cheaper.
Sometimes it actually is cheaper than the trains, depending on what train you're taking.
Yeah. And then I think that is something where, like, it was a lot of saved time. And it wasn't one of those cool overnight ones. They didn't have that option. So I could see myself wanting to still book a train if it was overnight, because then I'm not booking a hotel that night and it's a new experience that I might like. And so, it's possible that I would do that. Or like, if it wasn't as long of a travel time, but the view is really cool.
Yeah.
So, like when I went on a train from Valencia to Barcelona, it was like right along the coast, and I booked a seat that was like on the window side of the ocean side of things, and so like it was just gorgeous. So even if that was way longer, like there are times when I might just still have enjoyed that,
Sure.
But yeah, so I
that
think
makes
it's
sense.
good to like really think about options and not just go with an assumption of like, well, this is normally how I travel, so this is how I'm going to travel. It's like good to think about what makes the most sense in that location. Same with like, people could travel to a city. If someone's from a city that has good public transportation, or they assume that all cities are like that, it's possible to travel to LA or somewhere and then be like, oh, just kidding, I really should have rented a car, and so I think it
Yeah.
is good to like look it up in advance and kind of know what you're getting yourself into.
The other
Yeah.
piece that we haven't talked about yet is Uber.
That's true.
As a matter of fact, ironically speaking, the only times that I have ever booked an Uber is internationally.
Really?
Yeah, I've never actually called an Uber myself here in the States. I've ridden in one that other people have done, and I've gone with them, but I've actually only ever used Uber in Croatia. In fact, a couple of months ago, I got an email from Uber, and it was in Croatian.
Oh, that's so funny. You're
Yeah.
like, dear, our local Croatian customer.
I had no idea what it said because I
That's
don't read
interesting.
Croatian, but
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. Is if there were only like a couple car rides needed,
Yeah.
it wasn't constant, then that would make a lot of sense.
yeah. So when you're thinking about, you talked about renting a car, it's like, well, maybe I do it for the whole time. Well, if you really only need it to get between a particular site or something, and there isn't a bus that does that, Uber is definitely an option if it exists in your city
Yeah.
that you're going to. It's not everywhere. And just like in the United States, there are some places internationally that are kind of pushing back against Uber. Just kind of like with Airbnb, there's some challenges there too, like we've talked about, I think, before. But
Yeah.
it's definitely another option.
Yeah. And then another thing, I'm not a big fan of like a tour bus. Like that's not my jam in general.
Oh, come on, Cheryl.
However, I think there are times when it's like if you mainly didn't have a car and you're going to somewhere that's like some weird remote place, like there are times when like the tour bus or just the thing geared towards tourists might just make the most sense. As much as we enjoy traveling like locals and living like locals when we can, I don't know, like my family was in Alaska and we got the opportunity to go up past the Arctic Circle, and like that's not
That's
a thing.
super cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. But like that's not a thing where there's like a train that's really going to do that, or like public transportation, and it was a long day and everything. So there's a company that offers that just to take
Yeah.
you up past the Arctic Circle. And it was like that made so much the most sense, and everything. And so
Yep.
yeah.
The one time I've booked one of those myself was when we went out to Stonehenge and Bath. So we were staying in London, but it was a day trip. It was an all-day thing, but we went out to Stonehenge, we went and saw Bath, and then came back. And it was a tour bus. It wasn't really a tour per se, because they didn't like stop at a whole bunch of places and tell us. It was mostly just, hey, we take you out here. Now you've got this amount of time here. And now we're going to take you over here. I think they might have told us a little bit about Bath, but it was mostly a chance for us to just kind of wander around. So it was kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Where we had the transportation and it was arranged and it was ahead of time. It was a nicer bus than a lot of the public transportation buses are sometimes. But it wasn't this like stuck in a tour group, which I
Yeah.
think that's what both you and I are not always keen on, because sometimes tour groups are great and the tour guide is incredibly engaging and tells you things you want to know and you wouldn't have known otherwise, but sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
And then you're trapped.
Well, and then it's like I don't know if I always want to hang out with like that group of tourists or not. I'm not, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
yeah.
I get it, you're a travel snob, I understand.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I was trying to think of what my family did. We went to Stonehenge, but we had rented a car in England and did a big loop of the country. So we went, when we went to Bath and we went to Stonehenge, we just like took our own car that we had rented. And so
Yeah.
that worked out nicely. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So what about navigating public transportation when you're in a city?
What do you mean?
How do you go about it? How do you navigate? How do you figure it out?
Oh, how do you like figure out where to go and when?
Yeah.
So for me, there's sort of two things. One, sometimes I'll actually go into the tourist information office, which
Okay.
a lot of cities will have, because that's what they're there for. And so you can actually ask them, hey, what's the best way to do X, Y, or Z? Where's the nearest, bus stop or train station or, whatever, or what's the best way to do this? But the other thing, and this is yet again a reason why I love my technology when traveling, a lot of public transportation around the world has an app now for their system, whatever it is, and it'll give you timetables. Sometimes it'll let you buy tickets through the app, and you can oftentimes get it in English if it's in another country. There's often an English version. So that's what I love, because then I have access to that information. And I'm a paranoid traveler. Not so much flying, but with things like buses and trains, because I'm not confident in them because they aren't necessarily as regimented or predictable sometimes, especially with buses. And so I'm the type of person who will check, well, except I will do this flying too. I will check my ticket or the information or the screen 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 times, even though it says the same information, just to make sure I'm going to the right platform, or it's arriving at the right time, or it isn't delayed, or whatever. And so for me to have that in my app so that I can have it on me and I can check it even if I'm not there, that's really helpful for me.
That makes a lot of sense. I could see that. Yeah.
What about for you?
I start with Google Maps and I will look at their public transit directions.
I always forget that they do that.
It is so cool. It's great because they're taking into consideration the walking. They're also taking into consideration different forms of public transportation. So it'll show you all these different options of combinations of maybe it's a transfer to a different line, maybe it's a transfer to a bus. And so it considers all these different options and everything. And then after I've done that a little bit, I might then check out like the map, because there's like if you're using a metro or something, there's a printed map and it shows all the different colored lines and you can see where they connect and everything. And so I even like to like watch those while I'm on the train, even if I already know my directions. And Google Maps will even tell you how many stops. And so that's really nice.
Really? Oh, wow.
And what the names of the stops are. So you can even check that you're headed the right direction, which is really nice. So I'm a big fan of that. And then,
and
yeah,
that works
definitely
both internationally and domestically, correct?
Yes. I don't know if it's 100% of the cities, though, because
I'm sure it's not.
Even though I'm not sure if Paris has it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It could have just been down when I looked at it, but a couple times I've looked at Paris and it didn't have that information. But I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So, and then it's also good if you're here and you're playing with it, remember that it wants to know what time either you're leaving or arriving at, which means you need to tell it not a time locally to you right now, but a time that would be a reasonable time of day to travel, because maybe the trains run only certain hours or way less often at 2 a.m.
Right.
So you might get misinformation if you're trying to start to look at that stuff now. But
so, for example, if I were to try and look at, let's say that Paris does have it, and I were to look at it right now, well, for you and I right now, it's about 8:10 in the evening when we're recording this. And Paris is going to be 9 hours ahead of that, right? I'm pretty sure that it's 9 hours ahead. So that would make it what time? I got to do math now. 9 and 8, 17. So is that 5 a.m.? Like 5:10? Did I do that?
sure.
right?
I don't know.
Let's double check with the Google. Okay, Google. Let's see. Time in Paris. And look at that. 5:11 a.m. I can do
good job.
time math. So if I was looking and I was like, oh, I want to know what'll happen at 8, at 8:30 p.m. because that's when I'm going to be coming back from the Louvre. I'm totally making this up. I have no idea if the Louvre's open that late. It's probably not. But it's actually not the time it is in Paris. So if I were to look right now, Google would give me the time it is now in Paris.
Yes.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
so you
it
have to do some of
knows
that yourself.
Yeah, it knows the timetables of, these different transportation systems. So, which
And
is
it's
really
just doing
nice.
it all live. But
Yeah.
if you went and you said, and you did the leave at or arrive by, that would be in the local time, yes?
It would be in the time of that location.
Right. So if I said,
In
oh,
Paris
I'm going to
time.
leave, even if it's right now and it's still, 8:10 p.m. here in the Seattle area, but I wanted to find out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when I wanted to arrive at the Louvre, which is probably not a great plan. But if I were to put that in right now, it would do it at 4 o'clock there in Paris, right? You wouldn't have to do a time conversion.
Correct.
Okay.
Although
it's only
now
if you're
I'm
trying to do
going
it live that
do
you have
it.
to do the mental math.
I'm doing it right now, though, just because now I want to. I'm doing the Spanish Steps to the Colosseum in Rome.
Okay.
Just to let you know, if you drive, that takes you 10 minutes, so that's pretty close.
Great.
If you want to do public transit, yeah, it shows there's an option from 5:14 to 5:40, from 5:31. So this is all AM because that's the time there. So that I hit leave now, but I could do depart at, and then I could select on a calendar or even just what time I want to depart at. So let's say I'm going to be there on September 9th, and I'm going to be there, and it's going to be 5:30 when I'm going to leave. Then it shows me on a Monday at 5:30,
the
this is the
typical
time. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's super helpful. It even shows you like the color of the line and if it's a bus or an underground or whatever. So I like that a lot. It gives good advice. And then something to think about with using public transit is kind of like Ryan, you were talking about getting a train pass in Switzerland. Oftentimes there's a local like metro pass of some sort. A lot of times it costs money, so you have to think about like what kind of convenience is this adding, or am I required to buy it? Some of the systems you have to have the card. And then it might be worth it though, because if you're showing up and the train's like almost there or about to leave, or the bus or whatever, then to have the right change, or to have some of them will have like a credit card machine where you can buy even a €2 ticket with a credit card, but then you still have to like enter in all the information on the machine as opposed to just going through like a turnstile and swiping or tapping your card or whatever it is. And so I would say maybe look into when you're at one of the larger stops of whatever kind of system it is, because a lot of systems also, they don't have the option to buy whatever type of card or anything at every single stop. It might be some of the larger ones, kind of the hubs where that is going to be. And so I would say check it out maybe even early on, see how much that costs, and you might just want to do that and put some money on it even to just be able to use that. So that's a thing to look into as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Good suggestions.
Thanks.
It's almost like you've done this before.
Nope. I just close my eyes and picture going to the Colosseum.
Yeah. As we all do.
Any transportation horror stories you have, Ryan?
Oh boy. How about a transportation annoyance? How about that?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what the deal is. I don't know when this changed, and I don't know why this changed. But when flying into the United States from another country, if you are not flying into your final destination city, you now have to go through security again in the United States.
Really?
Yes. Even though you did it in your previous country, you go through all the customs and immigration stuff, and then they funnel you back out into the regular part of the airport, and you have to go through security again, which means, remember that water bottle that you were really careful about making sure it was empty until after you got through security?
I was careful about that. You're right.
Yeah. And you had all of your toiletries in a really easily accessible place before you got on the 9-hour flight.
Yeah. And then after that, I pulled out the different items that I needed.
Right. And so the stuff kind of fell to the bottom of your bag. Well, guess what? You need to dump that water again and find all of those little tiny 311 bags. Because
and take
you have
the
to go through
shoes
security
off.
again.
Yikes. Take the laptop out of the bag.
Yep.
All the things.
Yep. So frustrating. I actually missed I don't remember if I mentioned this or not, but I missed a flight because of it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's very annoying.
Coming home from Slovenia this year, our flight was delayed by about an hour, but we still, if we didn't have to go through security, we would have made our connecting flight.
Oh, boo.
But because this was in San Francisco, I think, they funneled us back out, and then we had to go back through security, and they were running one security line.
Fun.
One.
Good job, San Francisco.
I was not happy.
So I think a piece of advice out of that because of that reason and just because of like overall experience at different points that we might have is to book your connecting city outside of the United States.
That could be it. The other piece, depending on where you're flying from, try to have as few connections as possible.
Oh, that's always the case. Yeah.
Like from Seattle, you can get direct flights to Europe because you just go the polar route. Sometimes they're a little bit more expensive, which I think is why we flew into San Francisco. But sometimes that might be something that someone's willing to splurge on because it will save you travel time.
That's true.
Not just travel time in the air, which it will save you, but also then on the ground, going through security, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can make your entry city to the U.S. the final U.S. city that you want to fly to, that would definitely help.
Yeah. And it's just
sure.
fun to see other airports sometimes. There's some cool
It
ones.
can be. There's
So,
some fun
yeah.
airports out there. There's some lame airports out there. But
Yeah.
there's some fun airports out there too.
And you could Google it to find which are the best ones. You know, people have opinions and they're on the internet.
Sure.
Turns out, did you know?
Really? People put their opinion on the internet.
It's not all fact.
That sounds so fascinating to me. That people would want to share their opinion with the entire world.
Yep.
Imagine that.
Oh, boy.
All right, I think that's probably going to wrap it up for our travel talk. Do you
Yeah.
think? Transportation
I think
travel?
so. I think so.
All right, so let's move into Wish You Were Here's then, shall we?
Sounds good.
All right, for this part of the podcast, Cheryl and I are each going to highlight a travel attraction from places that we have been. Just a brief little snapshot of a really cool location or restaurant or excursion or something that we've done in our travels. Just kind of like one of those little postcards that says, Wish You Were Here. So Cheryl, what is your Wish You Were Here for this week?
So my Wish You Were Here this week is the Getty Center in LA, Los
Okay.
Angeles, California. It's right off
that
the
LA. I got it
405.
confused with the other LA.
Oh boy. It's right off the 405. You know how you're going on the 405 over to the 10 and then to the 1 and then yeah, you know that. I'm just trying to bother you. Is it working?
No, because you're talking about Southern California, so it's totally fine in the context of Southern California.
Do I need to
put
use
the
my
article "the" in
accent,
front of it? That's completely fine because that's the way they talk about it down there. So I don't have a problem. Now, if you're trying to talk about 405, that's up here. There is no "the" in front of it.
Oh, goodness gracious. You're clearly not bothered at all.
Nope.
So, the Getty Center, it is a museum, and it is, right in LA, and it's very cool. It has a really cool view out of it. It has some, like, rotating exhibits and things like that. But,
Oh, sorry. You said rotating, and I pictured like physically rotating like around in a circle. You mean
that
exhibits
sounds fun.
that go from place to place?
yes,
Like
yeah.
traveling exhibits.
But one of the parts that is cool about it is they have like an outdoor sculpture display on these terraces and gardens, and then you just get like a view of the city, which is really cool because it's up on a hill. And so it's just a really pretty location. There are multiple Gettys, and this
As in
is
multiple museums
locations.
or as in multiple people? Okay.
locations, museums, yeah. And so it's part of the Getty Trust, and it's a fun one. I enjoy it. It's not massive, and
What
so
kind
that's
of museum
fun.
is it, Cheryl?
Oh, it's an art museum.
Art. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. It's just
Was
it's a
that
museum.
killing you?
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
And
it's
has a
kinda
view.
what you-
Okay.
It's kind of what you picture with an art museum, and it's not massive, which I enjoy because it's fun to like go for a few hours and everything. And so,
What type of art do they have in their permanent installations?
well, let's see. They have Vincent van Gogh's painting The Irises. So That's exciting. It's a cool building. There's a really interesting fountain. There's these like big glass walls. Yeah. There's an interesting like tram station arrival design and everything. So there's just some really
Cool.
fun like courtyard design and things like that. Oh yeah, that's right. And there's like a big circular garden with a really cool like it looks like a hedge maze, but it's in the middle of a fountain. So you can't go in it, but it's a cool
Wait,
hedge
what?
design. It looks like a hedge maze, but it's not
There
a
are
hedge
hedges
maze.
in the fountain?
Yeah. It's pretty. I
How
don't know
are
for
there hedges in the
hedges.
fountain?
They, I don't know, some form of like a round bush design.
The bush is in the fountain.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe it's flowers, but it looks like a hedge maze in a fountain.
Oh, weird. So is there a fountain in the center of that?
Oh, I guess it's a pond.
Yeah.
Is it not a fountain if it doesn't flow?
Well, the fountain part is the part where the water kind of goes up and like splashes down. That's what a fountain is.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's a pond then.
Yeah, that looks more like a pond or is there water like running down the side?
It looks like a waterfall that goes into it.
Oh, but it's from the side. So I was picturing like a fountain in the middle and water splashing all over these hedges, and I was
That could be a
having
cool way to
trouble.
water them though. But
That
isn't
could
that
be.
building cool? It looks like Legos to me.
Yeah, the building's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, very.
So it's a fun place. How about you, Ryan?
So from my Wish You Were Here, we are going to go to Iceland.
Yay.
And I'm going to recommend an incredibly touristy, cliche location in Iceland. It's called the Blue Lagoon. Perhaps you've heard of it.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So whether or not I would actually recommend that you go there, I don't know. But it was really cool, so I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
So the Blue Lagoon it's relatively near the airport. So a lot of people will stop there either right after they arrive in Iceland or right before they leave, because it's a pretty good kind of stop off on the way to or from the airport. It is a geothermal bath. And I say bath not like you're taking a shower, but as in water. And the story is kind of funny because it was, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound funny. It was wastewater. I don't mean human wastewater or like animal wastewater, but they use the heated water from the earth to get electricity in Iceland.
Oh,
But
wow.
sometimes the water is too hot, or they have to do something with the water once they're done with it. And it's not like it's gone through any sort of, it doesn't have chemicals in it. They've just used it for the energy, and that's it. But so there was a power plant that was built, and then they just kind of started pouring the extra water out into and it's the black kind of lava fields. And so this water started to sort of fill it up, and it has all this really fine silicate in it, which is kind of it looks kind of like a white powder. And so it kind of forms a layer on these rocks, and then it kind of gives the water itself sort of this bluish hue to it. And so it's just kind of in there. So it's not
Wow.
natural technically, because it's only there because of the wastewater that was diverted there, but it's natural in that it wasn't made for the purpose of let's have this be a hot springs. And so they've turned it into this whole spa thing, and it's not particularly cheap, and that's why I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it for the cost. But it was included in the trip that we did when we went to Iceland, and it was real nice. We did it the day that we arrived, and it was a really nice way, after having been on the plane for whatever it was, 7 or 8
Yeah.
hours, to just kind of go there, and we just kind of got to relax in the water. It's warm, so even if it's cold out, which it often is in Iceland, the water is really warm. There's lots of different things. You can take some of the kind of the silicate mud and put it on your face and have a facial and all those great things if you want to. And you can do all sorts of fancy things at the whole spa, or you can just kind of go in the water and kind of enjoy it. But it was really relaxing, a really nice way to deal with jet lag.
Nice.
And to just kind of chill, but you're in the water, so you're not really sleepy per se. But and it's just a very different sort of feeling, because you turn and you look one way and it's the building that you enter, and you turn and look the other way and it's just these black rocks just kind of rising out of the water. And so it's very otherworldly. And
Wow.
the rocks are just coated with the silicate, but it kind of gives it sort of a, I don't know, not exactly slippery, but they don't quite feel like rocks, because they've got, I don't know, maybe a couple centimeters, maybe an inch worth of this silicate that kind of coats it. And as you kind of go up the side,
weird.
eventually it just kind of goes away and you just see the black rocks. So
Wow.
yeah, it's really cool. It's beautiful. It's super relaxing. I want to say it's like $100 or something like that. to
Okay,
get
so it
in.
is a lot.
It is not cheap, but it's very enjoyable. So I don't really do spa things, so I have no idea how much a spa would normally cost. Maybe that's normal for a spa, I'm not sure. But you can also there are other natural baths and things all throughout Iceland. And if you wanted one that was more for locals, you could totally do that. This is much more of a touristy thing. But it is really well done, and it is very enjoyable. The Blue Lagoon in Iceland.
Cool. I want to go there.
Okay.
That sounds so smart right after being on a plane. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, we were there on Easter, actually. I spent Easter in the Blue Lagoon.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it was
very
fun.
cool.
All right, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We would love it if you would follow us on social media. We are at Timwy Podcast. That's TMWI for Take Me With You Podcast. We are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And we will be posting pictures and cool things. So we would love it if you would follow us.
You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your favorite modes of transportation, maybe some advice on booking transportation, navigating it, any of that. We would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, if you have had a really good travel transportation story, which probably means things went poorly, you could call and leave us a voicemail and share it with us, and we would love to share it on our podcast. You can call us at 406-763-8699, or another way to remember that would be 406-POD-TIMWE. Please go ahead and rate and review us on whatever you're using to listen to this podcast. Please share this episode out with your friends on social media, especially if they're thinking about traveling and need to know a little bit more about transportation. And then make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss any of our episodes.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for our awesome artwork. You can check out more of her artwork at Beth Is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can check out Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
That's going to do it for this week's episode. Hopefully it was helpful for you with all of your transportation needs. So until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy nights, guided only by the lights above, and light little love. Oh, the world is out there waiting to explore, and all our troubles here wanting to be